Little girl's incredible plea to mafia boss for mother's safety revealed. What happened next was, Sofia's fingers trembled as she clutched the crumpled piece of paper, her heart racing like an engine on overdrive. The diner felt different today. The usual chatter of friends laughing over coffee and the hum of the grill seemed overshadowed by something dark, a sense of foreboding that sent chills down her spine. Her mother, Maria, had rushed to the back just moments before the voices changed. She had seen the way tension hung in the air like a thick fog, the way eyes darted nervously, whispering tales that only the walls could hear. Little did the customers know, their beloved diner was entwined in something deeper, something dangerous. Why does she put up with this? Sofia whispered to herself, the weight of bills and survival pressing down every day on her mother. Maria would smile at her, but Sofia could sense the fatigue etched in her brow. Desperation clawed at Sofia's mind. Everything seemed twisted, worn thin like the pale fabric of the waitress uniform that Maria often wore, stained with the scent of grease and hard work. She had always shielded Sofia from the darker truths, but today, as she hid behind the counter, Sofia couldn't ignore the fear slinking through her veins, knotting her stomach. Should she speak up? Should she confront the swirling panic gripping her chest? This was her mother's safety on the line. But how could a child like her challenge an entire world of men wrapped in power and deception? The thought hit her hard, dawning realization weighing her down. No one cares about us, she muttered, swallowing back her own distrust. Tears threatened, a constant reminder that her strength felt inadequate. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue with a rush of misguided courage. Sofia poured her heart into a letter. She wrote about her mother's kindness, her laugh that filled the diner like sunshine, the warmth wrapped around every meal she made. It felt naive, but what choice did she have? A child's plea, pure and innocent, somehow seemed like it had to carry weight. Could it reach him? The mafia boss, the one whose name danced ludicrously on the tongues of neighborhood gossip. What would happen if he saw it? The idea sent a shiver through her. Perhaps it could create a ripple in the value of fear that held them all. The moment she slipped the letter into the hands of a stranger, a well-dressed man with a face that spelled trouble, Sofia's heart sank. Tension hung so thick around her that each tick of the clock felt like a countdown. What had she done? She pulled her jacket around her tighter, the chill of dread knocking against her insides as she lingered near the back, her eyes flitting across the bustling diner, desperate to catch a single glance at her mother. As time crawled, Sofia's mind raced with possibilities. Would the letter provoke anger? Retaliation? Hell, would it change anything at all? Just outside the diner's glass doors, unseen eyes watched, feelings twisted as fear wrestled with urgency. This felt like stepping into a storm without an umbrella. She never imagined that one letter could set everything in motion, elevating her family's fate to a game of chance where the stakes were life and death. Bound by the shadows of her choices, Sofia's resolve solidified. No matter what, she couldn't back down now. Even if she was just a girl clinging to hope, she would have to embrace whatever came next. The world felt unbearably small around her as she gripped the counter. The way it was suddenly too loud, too alive. It was here that she sensed something more ominous rising, ready to shatter the fragile peace that had always defined their lives. In that moment, she was faced with a truth. Her mother's safety was not just a wish, it was a challenge set against an unknown force, and Sofia was about to find out just how powerful one small voice could be. The bell above the diner's door jingled softly, a sound that once brought comfort now felt foreboding. Sofia watched the man in the sharp suit slip out, his thin smile twisted, and she felt a flicker of something larger igniting inside her, a determination laced with fear. This was not just a game anymore, but a battle of wills. A battle she was suddenly thrust into, though she had never signed up for any of it. Every tick of the clock weighed heavily. A pervasive silence surrounded her, each pause between the diner's usual noise amplifying the dread weaving through her thoughts. It felt as though the air had thickened around her, coiling tight like a noose, and all she could think of was her mother, that unwavering pillar of strength, who had always made the diner feel like home despite the chaos outside. That if that letter opened doors to unseen consequences, Sofia had to become more than a frightened girl. She needed to become a strategist, mapping out moves like pieces on a chessboard, each step critical in the game that was now set before her. The world behind the wooden counter began to shift from one of mere survival to one of empowerment. The fear, once a paralyzing emotion, began transforming into a potential weapon. She envisioned confronting the storm head-on, the towering figure of a mob boss cloaked in danger, who now possessed her Plea. What could she say to him? Deep down, she knew she lacked the eloquence of a seasoned negotiator, but something deeper brewed within. Sofia had watched her mother navigate tricky conversations daily, managing to command respect from patrons who were often indifferent. If Maria could do that, why couldn't she? Slowly, she absorbed the lessons from countless days spent in the diner, observing, listening, understanding nuances of human behavior, but emotional struggles haunted her. Doubts clawed at the edges of her resolve. What if her mother truly was in danger because of this? A suffocating uncertainty wrapped itself around her throat. Should she have just stayed silent? Yet, if she learned anything from the whispered conversations outside their diner, it was that silence bred more danger than confrontation ever could. Just then, a thought struck her like lightning, and she felt her heart skip. If the mafia boss did see her letter, perhaps it could bring a spark of humanity to a man surrounded by shadows. What if he remembered being a child who also wanted safety for his mother? There was power in vulnerability, and her desperation could either repulse or compel him. As the clock struck a further toll, signaling each moment that passed, she resolved to gather herself. She would develop an approach, but it would require knowing more, uncovering secrets that lay shrouded. Glancing around the diner while her mind raced, she caught sight of the usual regulars, the businessman who often left early, the elderly couple that came for coffee every morning. Who among them could hold the keys to the secrets spinning around her? With renewed focus, Sofia stood tall. She would not be shackled by her fears. Determined, she decided to make her own inquiries, blending her budding instincts with the wisdom she had absorbed. Every interaction would become a small gleaning towards something bigger, as she equipped herself for the looming confrontation with the powerful man who could control their fate. This journey wouldn't be easy, but Sofia prided herself on her tenacity. If she could instigate change, even little by little, she could harness the strength buried within, even if it had yet to fully awaken. In that moment, with a flicker of hope and the gravity of her mother's safety on her shoulders, she prepared her strategy. The clock's ticking was no longer a sign of dread but rather a reminder that now was her time to act. As the evening drew dark, she stepped outside, her breath steady despite the chaos likely to follow. Somewhere in the shadows, the pieces were moving. And with a plan forming, she gasped at the realization that her small voice was no longer so insignificant. The next day would bring new truths, but for now, she was ready to embrace the storm. Tomorrow's dawn might bear revelations that would shake the very foundation of her understanding, but she was prepared. The moment had come not just for survival, but for discovering who she truly was. The morning sun spilled across the diner, illuminating dust motes dancing in the shafts of light. Sofia stood behind the counter, her pulse quickening as she anticipated the unfolding day. The weight of the letter she'd sent lingered like dark clouds overhead. This was no longer just a matter of serving coffee and ensuring the regulars received their orders on time, it had become a pivot point in her life. Doubts brushed against her mind, but she shook them off. Today was about action built upon the foundations of observation and understanding. The familiar faces of her patrons would serve not just as customers but as potential allies in her quiet crusade. She needed to glean information, to understand the dynamics of the world she had inadvertently stepped into. As the businessmen clinked their coffee cups together, engrossed in talk about stocks and profits, Sofia studied their faces, searching for hints of hidden motives. One man, a middle-aged banker, boasted a confidence that danced dangerously close to arrogance. Could he be entangled in the undercurrents she now sensed? Her mother's strong spirit echoed in her mind. She had once told Sofia that everyone wore a mask of sorts, those in power particularly so. The key was to look beyond the facade and see the truth concealed beneath. Sofia leaned against the counter, trying to mirror her mother's steadiness, all while her thoughts wove an intricate tapestry of strategy. Approaching the banker during his fourth cup of coffee, she seized the moment, her voice steady. "How's business treating you this morning?" Casual, unthreatening. Just a mere chit-chat, she told herself. He smiled and launched into a story about a recent deal he had secured, but even as he spoke, Sofia observed the shifts in his body language. When he mentioned the neighborhood changes, a flicker of anxiety passed across his eyes. A hint, perhaps, of something deeper going on. "What do you think about the safety of local businesses, especially with the reports of certain activities increasing around here?" His smile faltered, and for a fleeting second, she caught a glimpse of his true trepidation. Before he could respond, she cut in, "I just want to ensure that our diner and the community remain safe. We all rely on each other, right?" The banker looked thoughtful, possibly weighing his response. It struck her then that she could exercise this newfound bravery to engage not merely as a girl clinging to childhood, but as a woman who had the ability to manipulate conversations. The realization was empowering. She was no longer invisible. As she continued through her shift, her encounters unfolded like a game of chess, where every question and answer danced around uncharted territory. There was that feisty waitress with the piercing green eyes who, she discovered, had connections to a friend who worked within law enforcement. While chatting with her about shifts, she broached the subject of the trouble brewing in their neighborhood. The woman raised an eyebrow, as if sensing something in Sofia's tone, and began to divulge whispers of tensions and power struggles layered beneath the surface. Every morsel of information turned into fuel for Sofia's growing resolve. By the end of her shift, she had amassed more pieces of the puzzle than she had anticipated. With her energies aligned, she felt her purpose crystallizing, not just to seek safety for her mother but also to carve a place for herself in a world that felt foreign and oppressive. Upon stepping out of the diner, the sun hung low, casting long shadows. She caught her breath, feeling a swell of determination. But one question lingered at the forefront of her mind: is she ready to confront the mafia boss directly? Tomorrow would require not just strategy but courage. She felt the shadows gathering again, but this time, it was an invitation rather than a threat. The moment had arrived for confrontation. A test of her newfound resolve awaited. As she looked out into the bustling street, she wondered if she had what it took to emerge as more than just a voice calling in the dark. She stepped forward. With conviction rising in her chest, she made a promise to herself to face the man who controlled so much, fearless and unwavering, ready to discover what lay on the other side. And the question now became: would her vulnerability transform into strength, or would the shadows claim her? The diner was quieter than usual that morning, a stark contrast to the composure Sofia had feigned while Steve, the banker, sipped his coffee. Each cup she filled felt heavier, the weight of her intention looming larger than before. She no longer hesitated. The time had come to approach the mafia boss directly. No longer just Sofia, a waitress, or the girl from a rundown neighborhood, she had morphed into a strategist, ready to exploit the fragments of knowledge she had gathered. As she meticulously wiped the counter, her mind buzzed with plans. The insights she had gleaned from her conversations with patrons now took on new significance. The feisty waitress had mentioned names, subtle connections to the very people that walked through the diner's doors every day. Sofia could almost visualize the web of influence branching out from the seemingly innocuous diner, a nexus of power wrapped in ordinary lives, but fear curled at the edges of her determination. The reality remained that this wasn't merely a game of wit or courage, it was a confrontation that could endanger not just her but those she loved. Yet, the memory of her mother's advice echoed within her: sometimes, the only way to break through the noise is to make a sound of your own. With no customers lingering beyond their usual visits, she took a breath, letting the silence steep into a resolve. Reflecting on the banker's anxiety while discussing neighborhood safety, she questioned how fear could bend men of influence. They valued control, thus, those who threatened it must be approached delicately. Stepping outside, the afternoon air felt charged as though every gust of wind was a whisper of encouragement. One foot in front of the other, she began scouting the streets, familiarizing herself with her surroundings, the landscapes morphing into a strategic map of her next move. She had heard murmurs of the boss headquarters, a bar on the outskirts of town, the kind of place where shadows met whispers. As she walked, she considered allies. The waitress could be pivotal, her connections to law enforcement could provide insights into security measures. But would risking another's safety weigh on her conscience? In her chest, a paradox blossomed. The drive to safeguard her mother was intensifying, but so was the realization that each ally could become a pawn on a more dangerous chessboard. Returning to the diner for her shift felt oddly comforting. The regulars flowed in, grounding her amidst the rising tension. Conversations became rehearsals for tomorrow's meeting, her mind deftly integrating dialogues, adjustments, potential responses. She suspected that even in the chaos that surrounded the mafia boss, everyone's motivations were rooted in survival. Lunchtime brought a surge of patrons, the noise a welcome distraction from her turbulent thoughts. Each interaction reinforced her growing confidence, shaping her into a figure demanding respect rather than merely receiving it. She was aware now of her presence, how she could command attention by weaving narratives around inquiries and observations. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, painting the sky in dusky hues, Sofia felt a surge of urgency. Tomorrow wouldn't just be about confronting a man, it was about seizing her destiny. She stepped outside, the shadows stretching long and thin, heart racing. Sofia was no longer just a fragment of her mother's world but a woman standing at the precipice of change. It had dawned on her that confrontation was multi-layered. It involved not just words but a deep understanding of who stood in front of her, but as she thought of tomorrow, her resolve solidified, the unexpected clicked into place, hardening the fragility of her fears. Would she emerge victorious from this encounter, or would the shadows she sought to defy envelop her in a web much thicker than she anticipated? The answer loomed within reach, enticing and foreboding. The evening air thickened with anticipation as Sofia prepared herself mentally for the confrontation ahead. She had spent the night wrestling with her thoughts, envisioning every scenario that could unfold once she stepped into the dimly lit bar. The images of the mafia boss, looming larger than life, flickered in the recesses of her mind. It was more than a mere meeting, it was an interrogation of her very existence and choices. The diner, now closed, felt symbolic as she locked the doors behind her. Each turn of the key reverberated like the ticking clock in her chest, a reminder of the time lost and the urgency that hung heavy around her. It was just a bar, she reminded herself, a place no different from her diner, filled with people who, beneath their hardened exteriors, craved understanding and connection. For a fleeting moment, she questioned her decision to confront the underbelly of her city. The fear whispering in her ear was palpable, but so was the burning resolve within her. Sofia caught her reflection in the diner's glass, an image of a woman whose life was about to shift even if she couldn't see how drastically just yet. She exhaled deeply, the coolness of the air awakening her senses anew. She navigated the streets with calculated determination, each step echoing with the thoughts of the risks involved. What would she say? How could she appeal to someone who thrived on fear? She needed to find a way to shift the odds in her favor, to use her unexpected position as a leverage point. The bar came into view, its neon sign flickering ominously, welcoming yet intimidating. She stood at the entrance for a moment, allowing the raucous laughter and clinking glasses to seep into her skin. This wasn't simply a dive for a drink, this was a crossroads, a threshold to the unknown. Memories of her mother flooded back to her, a woman who had taught her to navigate danger with subtle grace, carefully orchestrating her actions against a backdrop of adversity. Entering the bar, Sofia quickly sized up the atmosphere. The patrons, a mix of local toughs and ordinary folk oblivious to the hidden power dynamics around them, were engrossed in their own lives. She slipped into that world, not as a disinterested observer but as a player ready to take control. She navigated through the buzz of conversation, her pulse steadying as she focused on the one figure she sought. There he was, the mafia boss. She could see him sitting at a table in the back, relaxed yet radiating authority. He was surrounded by his usual entourage, the air thick with arrogance and power. They hung on his words, their laughter erupting like an unspoken pact of loyalty. Shifting her weight, she reminded herself that the veneer of bravado could crack, revealing human frailty beneath. It was time to forge her path. As she approached, the cacophony of noise dulled to a distant hum in her ears. Each deliberate step became a recalibration of her identity. She was not just Sofia the waitress but now Sofia the strategist, her intention crystallizing into sharp focus. She rehearsed her lines mentally, already anticipating the moment she would break through to him. When she finally stood before the boss, the weight of her purpose crystallized within her. This was not just a plea for her mother's safety. This was a presentation of her resolve, an argument for a future where fear did not overshadow her choices. "I need a moment of your time," she stated, her voice steadier than she felt. The world around her hushed, all eyes turning to her. Would she be dismissed or would he see the earnest strength glimmering beneath her resolve? In that moment, would he view her as a mere waitress or recognize the fierce ambition that had ignited within her? The tension hovered heavily in the air, equal parts fear and expectation, and as the seconds stretched into an eternity, the faintest crack of recognition flickered in his eyes, a blend of intrigue and surprise. It was a moment that could either break or build her up, propelling her while laying bare everything she stood to lose. What would she offer him that could tip the scales? The answer was still unclear, but one truth had crystallized: the stakes of this encounter reached far beyond the confines of her own life. It was a reckoning that would reshape not only her future but possibly crack the facade of power he had built around him. The moment teetered on the brink of possibility. The real question remained: was she brave enough to seize it? The silence rippled through the bar, and Sofia felt the weight of every gaze pressing down on her, amplifying the intensity of the moment. The mafia boss leaned back in his chair, a slight smirk playing across his lips, as if he found her intrusion amusing. Every heartbeat drummed loudly in her ears as she steeled herself against the sneers of his entourage. This was not merely a confrontation, it was a negotiation of power, a test of her resolve. "Who do you think you are?" He finally spoke, his tone laced with both curiosity and condescension. The challenge was palpable. Instinctively, she noted the bar's ambience, the flickering of neon reflecting the kaleidoscope of emotions swirling within her, the fear, the determination, and the urgency. The stakes could not have been higher. "I'm someone who knows what you have taken from my family," she replied, surprised by the steadiness of her voice. "I'm here to ask you to reconsider, to release the hold you have over my mother. She deserves a chance to live free of fear." His laughter filled the space, low and rumbling, circulated by his followers like a dark cloud. "You think a few words from a waitress will change my mind? This is the life she chose." Her heart dropped momentarily. She feared that he may never see beyond her role as a waitress. The realization struck her like a bolt of lightning. She needed him to see her not just as a daughter defending her mother, but as someone that could be of value. "Maybe," she said, her voice gaining an edge, "but I am not just a waitress. I have information that could gain your interest. Information about a rival gang that's moving into your territory." The flicker in his eyes was subtle yet significant. "Go on." His demeanor shifted, curiosity overtaking his amusement. Sofia's mind raced. Could she outmaneuver him? A mixture of dread and exhilaration flooded her veins. "I've overheard conversations. They're planning an operation that could threaten your control over the West Side. I thought you might want to know before you lose what you've built." The room's energy shifted, the laughter died, tension replaced it. Was this her moment to change the dynamic? It felt like stepping onto a tightrope, balancing desperation and strategy. She had always been a waitress, but deep within, a strategist had emerged, fueled by the injustices her family had suffered. The mafia boss narrowed his eyes, assessing her with a scrutinizing gaze. "Why should I trust you? You think I'm fool enough to let a little girl into my inner circle?" "Because I want to help," she offered, almost instinctually. "If you want to keep your territory secure, I'm your best chance. But I can't do it alone." You've got the resources, I can provide you with the inside scoop. A partnership, if you will. For the first time, she sensed a crack in his formidable facade, a flicker of intrigue illuminating his expression. She continued, entrenching herself deeper into the conversation, her confidence swelling with each word. You intrigue me, and I get that I'm a gamble. But to protect my mother, I'm willing to risk it. What is there to lose? He leaned forward, elbows resting on the table, seemingly weighing her value against his needs. Every second stretched painfully, an indecisive breath hanging in the air. As silence enveloped them once more, she fought against the rising tide of uncertainty. Sofia felt a rush of determination. If she could redefine the game, even just a little, she could build bridges connections where once there was only fear. Let me prove myself, she urged, desperation lacing her tone. Give me a chance. You won't regret it. His enigmatic gaze locked on hers, and she held her breath. Would he see the tenacity behind her plea, or would she be dismissed as just another voice drowned out by the noise of his empire? Interesting proposition, he replied slowly, the corners of his mouth lifting slightly as if a plan was already forming in his mind. But know this, I don't play games. If you fail to deliver, then your mother's fate will be sealed. A chill ran through her, but beneath it was an exhilarating current of challenge. She had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. I understand, she replied, heart racing. The gamble was laid. As she stepped back from the table, she realized she had traversed into a new realm of existence, a player in a game that could unleash her potential or consume her whole. The question loomed: the path she had chosen began here, but could she navigate the treacherous waters she had just plunged into? The thought echoed in her mind, darkly profound. Would she truly possess the guts to outwit the shadows lurking beside her, or would they swallow her alive? Sofia walked out of the bar, the weight of her new role settling on her like an unwelcome shroud. The shadows of the Mafia's empire loomed large behind her, each step echoing with apprehension and possibility. She was no longer just a waitress, she was a negotiator, a strategist, perhaps even a player in a game far more dangerous than any she had previously encountered. Her heart raced as she replayed the conversation in her mind. Had she truly aligned herself with a man feared by many? The implications haunted her. She was driven by a singular vision, freeing her mother from the clutches of fear and manipulation. But the cost of this freedom was weighty. Trusting a mafia boss was like casting a die with only two sides, and the odds may not be in her favor. She approached her modest apartment, reflection washing over her with the tide of dusk. With every inch closer, the weight of her decision bore down like an anvil. What had she promised herself? What had she offered to the devil? The need to gather information on the rival gang weighed heavily in her thoughts. To infiltrate, to learn their plans, to be useful. Those were her immediate goals, yet beneath that surface glimmered another realization: she would have to sharpen her instincts and confront her fears. That night, Sofia sat at the small kitchen table, the low light from the bulb above illuminating her notes. They were hastily scribbled, coffee-stained reminders of what she had heard. Drawing diagrams and connections, she tried mapping the territory she would need to navigate the rival gang's key players and their operations. Her hands trembled slightly, fueled by equal parts adrenaline and anxiety, but she pressed on. Each detail she jotted down was a tether to the newfound power she sought to harness. She understood that no one would see her as an equal until she proved herself worthy. That knowledge burned within her, igniting something fierce and resolute. She thought back to her mother, the warmth of their shared laughter, the way they clasped hands in solidarity against a world that saw them as expendable. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. It was essential to remain invisible in the realm she now straddled, to learn their words and behaviors without marking herself as a pawn. The hustle and bustle of the streets, once mundane, felt like an arena where she was no longer a mere spectator. She was stepping into the light, shadow merging with the possibility of fleeting brightness. As she prepared for the day, she experienced a mix of dread and anticipation. Would she be able to carry off this ruse? Would her instincts guide her through every perilous encounter? Each interaction could move her closer to her goal or draw the attention of those who would rather silence her. The dawn broke with optimism as she headed toward her first meeting with a friend, a bartender who worked at a neighboring establishment. He was known for his ears as much as his cocktails, often hearing about the underbelly of the city while serving drinks. For Sofia, he represented an essential thread, the first connection in a network she needed to weave. "Just keep your wits about you," she murmured, adjusting her messenger bag. The resolve steered her mind into a place where fear threatened but did not conquer. As she walked through the city streets, the raw energy pulsated around her. Every face was a territory she needed to figure out. The pulse of the gang's life beat through the alleyways and busy intersections, breathing life into her aspirations. With determination flickering brightly within her, she approached the bar where her friend was stationed. Today, her research would begin, but somewhere deep inside, a question shimmered in the backdrop of her thoughts. Once she had gathered the intel she sought, could she wield it without losing herself in the rapid, chaotic tide of power she now sought to navigate? Sofia entered the bar, ready to play her part, unaware that every ounce of information she collected would lead her inevitably toward a reckoning she could neither foresee nor escape. The moment of truth was just on the horizon. Would she emerge stronger, or would she find herself ensnared in a web of her own making? The bar was dimly lit, a sanctuary for whispered secrets and half-heard confessions. Sofia's friend, Nick, was polishing glasses when she entered, his face brightening at her arrival. They exchanged quick pleasantries, and she felt buoyed by the familiarity of someone who understood the stakes, even if just slightly. "Got a minute?" she asked, lowering her voice as she slid onto a stool. "Always for you." Nick glanced around. "What is going on?" Sofia hesitated, the words knitting themselves in her mind, a careful dance of intention. Would revealing too much about her mission compromise her fragile facade? "I need to know what's happening with the Vargas gang. Rumor has it they're planning something big." Nick studied her, his brow furrowing. "That's dangerous territory. You sure you want to play in that pool?" She met his gaze. "I have to. For my mom's sake." The vulnerability in her voice surprised her. Would this push him away or draw him closer? After a moment, Nick nodded. "Okay. But you need to keep your head down. The less attention you draw, the better." As they exchanged intel, her mind raced. Each piece of information connected like threads on a loom, weaving a tapestry of understanding. She learned about the Vargas gang's key players, their methods, and the territory they dominated. She noted how Nick's voice steadied her anxiety. In the light of his insights, a formidable plan began to blossom. "Keep the rumors close to your chest, Sofia," he reminded her as their meeting ended. "Trust is a currency. Spend it wisely." Walking out of the bar, she felt the tumult of her life shift slightly, grounded by new knowledge yet increasingly aware of the responsibility it carried. The streets pulsed with life, and her newfound connection to the underworld became more tangible with every step. In the days that followed, Sofia immersed herself in the shadows, observing the rival gang from a distance. She began taking notes not just in her journal, but in her mind. The hesitation she once felt dwindled, confusion morphed into clarity. She learned to mimic their behaviors, noting how they interacted, who they trusted, and cowardly moves to avoid, walking past graffiti-splashed walls and into equally graffiti-strewn bar bathrooms where whispered plans unfurled. Sofia embraced her duality. The waitress was growing into the strategist she needed to be. She felt a burning desire to dismantle the power play, piece by piece, but it wasn't all progress. Each evening, as she returned home, doubt nested in her chest. What if she was playing this game while endangering her mother further? A nagging voice whispered that she was in too deep. The more she learned, the more at risk her family became. Her resolve deepened, but the stakes felt impossibly high. Sofia decided she needed to confront her mother's past in action rooted in truth, not deception. If she could seek forgiveness for her mother's choices, perhaps she could leverage that knowledge as she navigated the treacherous waters ahead. In the dead of night, she picked up her phone and dialed the one person who might have the answers she sought. Clarity, her heart told her, would require venturing into the storm of her own family's shadows. As the phone rang, she braced for an incoming wave, one that might very well alter the course of her mission. "Mom, it's me," she breathed when the call connected. "I need to talk. No more secrets." But as her mother's voice echoed doubt, Sofia's heart raced with the realization that she was approaching the nexus of her quest, where every choice from that point onward could either dissolve the chains binding her family or tighten them in ways she couldn't yet fathom. As she listed what she needed to uncover, and what risks she was willing to take, she wondered, would unearthing her mother's past illuminate a path to freedom or entangle them both deeper within the Mafia's dark grasp? Sofia sat at the edge of her bed, the phone pressed to her ear as her mother's hesitant voice faded into what felt like an echo of their past. Each question she posed felt laden with tension, a whispered plea laced with fear. She envisioned the shadows that hung over their lives, ancestors of choices long made, choices that had trapped her mother in a web of secrets and deception. "Why now, Sofia?" her mother finally asked, breaking the silence. "It's too dangerous to look back. You're better off without knowing." A swarm of emotions surged through Sofia: determination, disappointment, and anger. "I deserve to know the truth. This cycle can't continue. I can't keep protecting you when I don't understand what I'm protecting you from." The silence thickened. Her mother remained quiet for a long stretch, and Sofia imagined her weighing the risks against the reliving of painful memories. Time stretched, sharpened by anticipation. Finally, her mother sighed. "You want to know about Carlos? It's not a pretty story." Carlos. The name was another link in the chain that bound her mother to the Vargas gang, a name Sofia had heard only in whispered references filled with dread. As her mother began to unravel the tale of a love intertwined with betrayal and danger, Sofia faced a barrage of conflicting emotions. Curiosity gnawed at her, but so did the weight of heritage and culpability. He was charming, bold even. But with that came a life of crime, her mother explained, voice trembling. "I wanted a normal life, but I got swept up in it. Before I knew it, we were in too deep. I thought it was safer to play along, but that only made it worse, made us more vulnerable." Sofia took in her mother's words, absorbing the narrative as it shaped her understanding of their current plight. "Vulnerable to who, Mom? What is the truth of the people we're dealing with?" Her mother hesitated, and Sofia's heart raced. If she was to dismantle the memories that would bind her closer to peril, she needed her mother to confront the consequences of her past choices head-on. The Vargas gang is about power. Kicking them back was never an option. When you love someone like Carlos, it blurs the lines between love and survival. When things went south, I made the only choice I thought I had run. But those decisions came at a cost. The phone call shifted from more than just a conversation, it transformed into a confessional. For the first time, they were dismantling the illusions that surrounded their lives. As Sofia listened, each revelation was a new piece in the larger puzzle of her existence. "I lost everything, Sofia. And I don't want you to lose anything else. Just forget all this," her mother pleaded, a note of desperation punctuating her words, but the more her mother begged for silence, the more resolute Sofia became. She wouldn't be afraid of shadows anymore, she would face them. "No, I can't. I want to go back to ignorance. Not if it means putting our future in jeopardy." The conversation ended on a heavy note, the fractures in their relationship laid bare. But instead of despair, something ignited within Sofia: a fierce resolve to take control. The knowledge that her mother's decisions had echoed painfully through time gave Sofia the strength to confront the Vargas gang strategically. In the days that followed, she designed a plan akin to a meticulous choreography. She would need allies, as the shadows were thick and cunning. Sofia began to approach anyone who might lend her the insight she needed while continuing to study the habits of gang members from afar. She managed to glimpse how the Vargas's inner circle operated, even as the risk to herself multiplied, yet each clandestine move deepened her moral conundrum. As Sofia dispatched caution for information, she questioned whether she was becoming the monster she had sought to defeat. Could she wade through this murky water without becoming enmeshed in the darkness? The more she learned about Carlos, the Vargas's hold on her mother grew more tangible. With a gut-wrenching determination and a growing network of subtle alliances, Sofia began to position herself. It was time to take calculated risks. Ultimately, she stood at the threshold of action, a force rising from her resolve. The next crucial move was within her grasp. Confrontation with the Vargas gang lay just around the corner. Would she finally be ready to face the truth behind her family's enslavement to a criminal empire, and claim her own power? The moment had come for her to confront her greatest fears. Would she emerge victorious or lose herself to the shadows? As she gripped her phone, the weight of her newfound strategy hung in the air, pulsing with electric potential. Now it was time to execute her strategy. Each step forward could change the destiny of her family forever. Sofia entered the diner, her heart pounding with the weight of her purpose. It was no longer just a simple cafe filled with familiar faces, it was now a battleground for control over her family's destiny. She had transformed from an innocent girl scrawling a plea on paper to a formidable strategist ready to confront the powerful mafia that had held her family captive for far too long. The shift in her perspective was profound. No longer a bystander in her own life, she embraced the role of an operative, catching whispers of information and maneuvering her way through the complexities of the criminal underworld. Throughout the week, her efforts had compounded. The connections she had forged, including her friendship with Nick and her observations at the bar, had begun to yield valuable insights into the rival Vargas gang. She diligently documented every detail, every interaction, creating a comprehensive picture of their operations. The Nina phrase, "knowledge is power," echoed in her mind, transforming into her mantra. Each insight she gleaned solidified her confidence. She realized she didn't need to defeat the darkness with brute force. Intellect could light the way. The culmination of her work unfolded during a pivotal meeting at the diner with Nick. He sat across from her, the somber look on his face mirrored her own anxiety. "You understand the stakes here, right?" he asked, seriousness thickening the air. "If you go in unprepared, it could endanger not just you but your mother too." The reminder snapped her focus, forcing her to confront the gravity of her choices. "I get that, Nick," she replied firmly, conviction lacing her voice. "But if I don't act, we'll remain prisoners of fear. I need to take back control of our lives." He nodded, the concern in his eyes warming to respect. "Then let us strategize. I'll help you gather what you need for your next move. If you want to confront the Vargas, we'll ensure you have the upper hand." With renewed motivation, Sofia dove into research alongside Nick, preparing for her risky venture. Carefully, they reviewed the routine of the gang members, mapping out potential vulnerabilities. As Sofia crafted her approach, she felt an empowering blend of anticipation and dread surging through her. Every detail added onto her existing resolve. The stakes were personal, and she needed to protect her mother at all costs. Finally, the confrontation day arrived. The evening sky cast eerie shadows that danced across the diner's facade as she made her way toward the bar where the gang gathered. The familiar neon light flickered ominously as she stepped inside, and a wave of determination surged through her. She was no longer afraid. They were merely men who thrived on fear and intimidation. Sofia approached the table confidently, where the mafia boss lounged with his entourage. The recollection of her previous visit felt like ages ago, but her heart was now a fortress. The fear that had once paralyzed her transformed into fierce ambition. "I have information that could secure your territory," she stated, her voice steady, rising above the murmurs. She sensed the shift in the room, eyes turned toward her, intrigue peaked. The boss raised an eyebrow, his interest suffused with scrutiny. "Interesting. And why should I trust a child like you?" "Because I know how to help," she replied. Each word came from a place of deep resolve. "I've been watching your rivals. The Vargas are planning something destructive, and I can help you gather intel before it unfurls. Collaborate with me. It's a partnership that offers mutual protection." The dangerous game of negotiation had only just begun. As she spoke, she saw the potential flicker in his eyes, an indication that her elaborate ruse might hold weight. "You think you can outmaneuver them?" he asked, skepticism lacing his tone. "More than just outmaneuver," Sofia asserted, her lips curling into a confident smile. "I can give you insights no one else can." The tension hung thick, and in that moment, Sofia felt herself teeter on the precipice of change. Would she fall away, crushed under the pressure of her own audacity, or could she spring forth into a new future where she dictated terms, where fear no longer governed her life? With a wave of decisiveness overriding the trepidation of past moments, she reached across the table and offered a hand. "Let us make this work," she urged, her resolve shining through the shadows surrounding them. As the mafia boss assessed her, smoke swirling around him like the past that encircled her, he finally took her hand, sealing an unholy alliance born of desperation and ambition. "You've got guts, I'll give you that," he smirked, yet a flicker of respect shimmered in his dark gaze. Sofia's heart thundered as she had indeed stepped into a new existence, one that bore heavy risks but also monumental possibilities. She stood at the threshold of a world she had previously feared, ready to take hold of what was hers. Today, she had stared into the face of darkness and chose to wield her voice, transforming it into an instrument of change. As she walked away from the bar, feeling the weight of her pact settle into her bones, she absorbed the truth: she was no longer chained to fear but liberated by courage. The road ahead would challenge her resolve, yet she felt fortified by the strength she'd unearthed from within. No shadows would govern her life, she walked with confidence into the light that now beckoned her forward. Finally, as she arrived back at the diner, a moment of clarity washed over her. Her mother would no longer have to cower beneath the weight of secrets. Sofia had crafted a new reality, one defined by hope, strategy, and, above all, an undeniable sense of self. This was only the beginning, her journey had only begun, and she was ready to write her own story. If you found this journey of resilience and transformation inspiring, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and ensure this powerful message resonates with others. Comment your reactions and theories about Sofia's incredible journey as she takes control of her life. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.